So hello everyone, we are going to talk about Docker today and how you can use your Docker containers to run your applications, right? So first step, we are talking about what is Docker. Okay, so let's go to some definitions. Like we can read here, Docker is an advanced version of virtualization. The main work of Docker is containerization. The keywords of Docker are develop, ship and run anywhere. We can run multiple containers on one host. Containers does not have any operating system. What does it mean? Like container does not have any operating system. That means every Docker container runs on your host operating system, right? But you can create multiple Docker containers from multiple operating system images. So what does it mean? Let's figure it out. So here we can see, you already know about virtual machines. If you don't know, you can see here like virtual machines. You can run multiple virtual machines on your host. So virtual machine, what is the main difference between virtual machines and your containers is your virtual machines run on your directly on your infrastructure. So you can see here we have infrastructure and the hypervisor that enables your infrastructure to be a virtual, to create some virtual machines. So your virtual machines directly use your infrastructure resources, right? So if you're creating a virtual machine, you have to define your how much RAM or how much storage it will be using from your infrastructure resource. But inside your Docker container, you don't need actually to define your resources, right? So every Docker container runs on your host operating system, not your directly on your infrastructure, right? So you can see first we have our operating system running. So what you can do is, so what is the problem that we faced? So why we are using Docker, right? So let's figure it out. And let's say you have your local machine and you have an application running on it. This is a local machine, let's suppose, right? So this is your local machine and you have an application inside. Suppose you have a directory and inside that directory you have an application project. Maybe that's just a Node.js project, right? So what you are using to run that application, that Node.js project, maybe you needed the Node.js, right? So if you are using the Node.js version 14 or 12 or 14, let's say 14, right? And another thing, you need npm, right? And you need some dependencies also, right? You need one operating system. Let's say you are running on a Ubuntu operating system and you have installed the Ubuntu, right? So let's say maybe your friend or something asked you for your application and you shared your application files, right? So if some another guy want to run your application, so let's say another computer, another machine, you want to run your application on some another machine, right? So maybe if you are using Node.js 14, so you have to figure it out and you have to tell your friend, or or if you are running your application on another machine, so you basically have to define or you have to install the same dependencies and same versions of Node.js or anything or any application you are using. Maybe you are using Java, so you have to install the same JDK version inside your another machine to run your that application. So this might be a typical task, right? So not typical, but you have to run only another machine. But let's say if I say you we have to run your machine, your application inside a lot of machines. So let's say we have 1, 2 or 3 or 4 machines. This is 2, 3 or 4 machines. So you have to actually install all the same dependencies inside every machine, right? So this can be a problem, right? So you can, here Docker comes. So what Docker does is Docker pack all your application and dependencies and your operating system itself inside an image, and using Docker you can just provide a Docker image of your application to any computer, and you can run on any server, any machine, or any operating system, right? So let's move further. So what are the images and containers? So you can see here, Docker images are the read-only binary templates used to create Docker containers, or single file with all dependencies and configurations required to your program for running your program, right? And what are the containers? Containers hold the entire packages that needed to run the application. We can say that the image is a template and the container is a copy of that template. So what does it mean, right? So let's see. So what is an image? So let's say this is our image. So you can suppose an image like a template or a predefined configuration. So inside your image you can define what dependencies or what other things you need to run your application. Like this is your Docker image, and you defined like I need Node.js 14 version running on Ubuntu, and we have npm also, and we have all our dependencies we are using in our application. So this is your Docker image, right? So you have defined all your configurations inside your Docker file. You can say it a Docker image, sorry, Docker image. And what you can do is you can share, you can add your application files inside this image, and yeah, your image is ready to go now. So you can just pass this image to every computer, every machine, every server, so they only need to run your image. So what happens when you run your image? What does it mean? Like your image cannot be run. When you run your image, that becomes a container. So container takes a copy of your image and run that. So in runtime you use containers, but image is a static version of container, you can suppose like that, right? So let's say how it can be beneficial to you as a developer. So if you don't need to go to production or anything, if you're just developing some project, right? So how it can be beneficial to you? You can actually use Docker containers to run your applications without installing all the dependencies inside your local computer, right? You can use of Docker container. So let's see what is a Dockerfile, because if we want to run, we define a Dockerfile. We are going to define a Dockerfile, and Dockerfile basically a text file. It contains some set of instructions. So we can see that what are the instruction we are defining inside of Dockerfile. So we can provide some from. So these are some commands, basically instructions. So we define our Dockerfile to create an image. So we already defined all the configuration what we need inside our image. So this is the from for the base image. So you always take a base image. Let's say if you want to run some application, and you want to run that application on Ubuntu, so you can define it from Ubuntu latest or Ubuntu any version. You want to run your application on Ubuntu OS, or you can define some from Node.js version, so you can run your application on some Node.js image, right? And you can provide some executable commands that will be executed just after you create your image and after you run your image as a container. So as we have a lot of instructions we can provide inside our Docker file, right? So let's say this is the example Docker file you can see, and here we are taking Ubuntu as base image, and we are defining a work directory. So work directory basically means inside your container we are taking a directory. So all the work we will do inside our container, that will be done inside our work directory will be defined already. So this is the run command, and this is copy. What we want to copy from our local to the container we can define in copy command, right? So let's say what is Docker volume, because we will make use of Docker volume for developing our application for the production. You can say like you don't need to actually install in your local, so you can run inside your container all your application using Docker volume. So you can see here volume is simply a container or a the volume is simply a directory inside our containers. You can map volume in two ways: container to container, host to container. So volume basically means you can define a directory as a volume. So everything you do inside your that directory, that will become a volume, right? So volume means everything you done into the volume, that will be changed inside another directory that you define as volume. So you can map volume in two ways, like container to container. So inside two containers you can define volume, so everything you change inside another container, that will be changed into another container also. And you can also map volume with this way, host to container. So suppose you have a file or a directory in your host local machine, right? And you want that I want to run it in container, and whatever I will change into my directory or into my application, that will be changed inside my Docker container also, right? So you can use this way, right? So you can see how to create Docker volume from host. You can see here, like, you have to run your container, you can say it a name, and this dash v means volume, right? So here you have to define your local directory, and here you need to define your Docker container directory, and you have to define your base image, from which image you want to run your container. And this is bin bash. You can add sh just to you want to interact with your container using shell, right? So now we have some application already here, and what we are going to do is we are creating application that will using Docker, right? So I have already inside my directory a Docker file. Here I defined some configurations. You can see from base image, I have chosen base image node 14 as base image, and I have defined some work directory. Let's say it is work, right? So now what the first step will be? In the first step, I need to create a Docker image. I need to build a Docker image using this Dockerfile. So how can I do that? I need to just doing executing a command. I'm going to execute. So this is the command docker build. So this is the command docker build, and I'm adding a tag, my work image, right? So that's all, right? So it is saying successfully built this image, successfully tagged my work image latest, right? So let's say if I want to check my images, so I have here my work image. So now I need to run my work image as container, and I want to define volume also. So I will run docker run it, because interactive mode, I want to run my container in interactive mode, right? So I'm saying docker run it, and I can define name of my container like my node container, and now I can define volume. So in volume I'm defining pwd current working directory, and this is my work directory work. So this one is my local directory, and this one is my container directory in which I want to create volume. I want to map the volumes, right? So I've created, and now I want to interact with shell, right? So it is sorry, I did a mistake. I have to define my image name also, my work image, because I want to run from my work image my container, right? So here we are inside of our container, and the interesting thing here is we have I have my docker file here, and you can see where I am inside my work directory, because I have defined my work directory as work. And so it is a container, it is not my local machine, right? So if I say, so this is my local machine, but this is my container. So I'm inside my container. Let's see, I have to I am initializing a new node project. So you can see here my package.json file is created in my local machine, but I have ran the command inside my Docker container. So it is an interesting thing. Here the interesting thing is come, right? So now I have creating a new index.js file maybe. So you can see here index.js file is created, and it does not mean only you need to change inside your Docker container, but you can make changes inside your local machine, and that changes will be appear inside your Docker container, right? So now if I do cat index.js, you see nothing, right? And if I say console.log hello Docker, so it is already auto saved, right? So if I do index.js, okay, so I need to save it. Retry sudo as 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, so I'm running a command. You can see here, okay, so it has changed. So I can run my files. So you can see hello Docker, right? Just like it, you can run any language or anything or any framework inside your Docker containers, right? So you don't need actually to install. So if I don't have Node.js installed inside my local, I can run inside my Docker container, right? So yeah, that's all for today, and I hope this will be beneficial to you as a developer. It's a very great thing. Yeah, and let's meet in the next video with something interesting. Yeah, bye bye.